Hey there guys, gals, and non-binary pals, Jim Potter here. Welcome to my channel where I talk about books and bookish things. I upload on Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon Central Time, with some extra videos thrown in, like for the month of December. I've got some extra ones sprinkled in here and there. I am an independent author, a avid reader, and a cat mom of 3. And today is a very special day because it is Jane Austen's 250th birthday, and I thought we would celebrate by redoing the video on my favorite book by her. Let's get into it. So, as many of you may or may not know, Mansfield Park was the very first book that I reviewed on my channel, back when I had no microphone and a really lousy webcam and no lighting and no idea what I was doing. I'm not even sure I edited it. I think I tried to do it all in one take. Like, it was bad. It was just bad. But Mansfield Park by Jane Austen is my favorite Jane Austen book. It's easily my top 3 favorite books. In no particular order, it's Mansfield Park, Carrie, and Matilda. So, do with that information what you will. But today is Jane Austen's 250th birthday. I'm so excited. I've been joking with friends and family that I was going to disappear to Bath for my birthday, because my birthday was the 15th, and hers is the 16th of December. So for my 37th birthday, her 250th. Of course, I didn't do that because of funds, because traveling to Bath, England is quite expensive. So let's start with a little backstory on Jane Austen. So she was born December 16th, 1775. She died July 18th of 1817. So she was able to complete and publish 6 novels, which are Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Emma, Persuasion, Northanger Abbey, and Mansfield Park. Well, she has a short epistolatory novel called Lady Susan, and then she has an unfinished novel called The Watsons. She never married. There is some speculation about a romance that went awry for her, and whether or not they were actually engaged or they were just courting or what happened, and no one truly knows what happened to throw off the engagement. We know about Jane Austen primarily through her letters to her sister Cassandra. It's suspected that Addison's disease or Hodgkin's lymphoma was the primary cause of her death. Newer research suggests that it also may have been tuberculosis, passed on through exposure to cattle or unpasteurized milk, which was very common during her time period. In order of publication, her books are Sense and Sensibility, 1811, Pride and Prejudice, 1813, Mansfield Park, 1814, 1815 is Emma, Persuasion is 1817, and Northanger Abbey was 1817. Persuasion and Northanger Abbey, of course being published in 1817, were published after her death. My favorite quote of hers is, "Let other pens dwell on guilt and misery," which I think is very apt. So getting into the work itself, the book blurb on the back of my copy is, "Everyone looks upon shy, self-effacing Fanny Price as the poor relation among her 4 spoiled cousins at Mansfield Park. Adopted at a tender age by an uncle and aunt who have grown rich from a sugar plantation in distant Antigua, she finds herself morally at odds with them and their offspring. Her chief consolation is the kindness of their younger son, Edmund Bertram, whom she secretly loves. The arrival in the village of city sophisticates, Henry and Mary Crawford, sparks a series of romantic entanglements which lead the Bertrams to the brink of social disaster and Fanny to the indisputable conclusion that proprietary and pretty manners are not substitutes for integrity," which is one of the things I absolutely love about this book. We will be getting into spoilers. This book came out in 1814, so spoilers on a 211-year-old book. So if you don't want spoilers for the book, I'm sorry. I'll put a timestamp on the bottom, and I'll try to remember to put it in the description for this one so that it's not spoiled for you. But let's get into the book. So, like it says in the description, in the blurb on the back, Fanny Price is initially ignored and looked down on as the poor relation. Her mother didn't marry well. Her two sisters married very well, but Fanny Price's mom, our heroine's mother, married very poorly, and he got injured, and now he can barely support his family, and they're just breeding children left, right, and center, and they have more mouths than they can handle. And Mrs. Norris, one of Fanny Price's aunts, convinces Sir Bertram and his wife that they should take in one of the relations, one of Fanny Price or her siblings. Well, I have no use for a boy. Well, we'll get him a commission in the Navy, and he's taken care of. And so they send for Fanny Price, and it's originally thought that she's going to live with Mrs. Norris. And Mrs. Norris, oh no, I couldn't possibly. I wanted you to take care. You're in a much better position. And so she gets to live with the Bertrams. Mrs. Norris lives in the vicarage on the property of the Bertrams with her husband, who later in the story passes away. And so she moves in with the Bertrams and Fanny Price. And Fanny Price is a victim of neglect in a lot of ways. And in spite of this, or because of it, she grows into a very strongly opinionated person, but she doesn't readily share those opinions. It isn't until she meets the Crawfords, actually, who are very outspoken and very liberal for the time period, and social sophisticates and blah blah blah, that she starts to come into her own. Perhaps inspired by them, in spite of them, because of their poor actions, inspired by them. So there's a quote in the book that Edmund says, "You must really begin to harden yourself to the idea of being worth looking at." He says this to Fanny Price because she's uncomfortable with people looking at her and calling her beautiful and all these things because she's been ignored and she's never had praise heaped upon her. So now that she's a young lady and ready to come out in society and possibly marry to some advantage, she's not used to any praises, and she sees them as insincerity, because the only time people were nice to her was when they wanted to do something, or right before they started teasing her or mocking her, with the exception, of course, being Edmund. And so she regards compliments as suspicious, which I very much related to that, because that was my experience growing up. I was bullied quite a bit growing up. I didn't know if I could trust anything anybody said to me that was nice. I had terrible taste in friends. The people I considered friends were not good to me. Anyway, but this line that Edmund says foreshadows Fanny Price owning her worth and stepping into it, that she's worth looking at. Was she worth listening to? So when everything goes down with Maria Bertram and Crawford, his sister, Mary Crawford, Henry's sister Mary Crawford, says, "Oh well, we should do this and that, and Tom isn't gonna live because he's taken ill, and so Edmund will step up and I'll marry him and it'll be great." And Fanny's like, "Hold on, we're going through a series of family tragedies. You're not family, first of all. You have no business being here. Second of all, Tom's not dead yet. He could still recover, and you're already spending his money, though he were dead. That's despicable. Second of all, Edmund doesn't want to run the property. He wants to become a pastor, or a vicar, or a what have you. The Anglican Church equivalent of pastor. He wants to be a minister, a reverend, and he has no designs greater than that. He's resolved himself to it. He's quite happy to do that. And let us process, let us grieve. You are out of line." And Mary Crawford's like, "Well, you have a part in this because you didn't agree to marry Henry." And and the whole rest of the family's like, "Oh." Like, it's very definitely a mic drop moment in the book, because Fanny steps up and steps into her own in that moment, defends the people who have done nothing but deride her, and shows herself worthy, not just to them, but to herself. And it's It's a beautiful story. It's often misunderstood. I have a couple reviews, 1-star reviews. I did an Instagram post a while back, 1-star reviews of my favorite books. This one is 1-star, gag. It's true that I'm not a big fan of Jane Austen, but even so, this book in particular was difficult to finish and offered no satisfaction once I had finished. 1-star. This novel bored me to tears. My apologies to all the Jane Austen fans out there. This is my favorite book because it has the most headstrong female character. And she has to earn it. Like, she's not just headstrong because her father, like, you have Elizabeth Bennet, obstinate, headstrong girl. That's where that phrase comes from. It comes from Pride and Prejudice. She's always been obstinate and headstrong. She's contrary, and she's proud, and she's prejudiced, and she's all of these things. And she's always been that way because her father encouraged it. And you have, in Sense and Sensibility, you have Eleanor, who's very quiet, and she feels just as deeply as Marianne, but she keeps it to herself. I like Eleanor more than I like Marianne, because Marianne's like, no, we must be bold, and victims of love, and blah, blah, blah. And Eleanor's like, I feel just as deeply, I just keep that shit to myself. And then you have Fanny Price, who loves and feels as deeply as Eleanor, and keeps it to herself, as loves and feels as deeply as Marianne, but keeps it to herself like Eleanor, and is obstinate and hard-headed and opinionated like Elizabeth, but keeps it to herself in order to keep the peace. Like, she sees all this stuff going on, and she bears it with grace, with dignity, and then when they finally keep stepping on her and walking over her, she stands the F up and she takes care of business. I love Fanny Price. I wanted to talk about the book as an idea, as an object to art for a moment. This book was ignored by reviewers when it first came out, but beloved by fans. The 1814 printing sold out. It's harshly disliked by modern reviewers, and I don't know why. Because it's by far her most biting commentary. Jane Austen, yes, she wrote romances, but she also wrote social commentary. And I think Mansfield Park has the hardest hitting social commentary in it. It's partially, allegedly, autobiographical. Slavery as a concept is not explicitly explored, but the Slave Trade Act was passed in 1807. Prior to the writing, slavery in Great Britain would be abolished after her death in the year 1833. The scene in chapter 21, where Fanny questions Sir Bertram about slavery and gets ignored by him, hints at Fanny Price's abolitionist values. Jane Austen is believed to have been an abolitionist, or at least have been sympathetic to the abolitionist movement. And the house, Mansfield Park, was clearly built on the backs of the slave trade. It is not a grand sweeping estate that's been there for ages like Pemberley or like the house in Emma Woodhouse's house. It's a newer place. It's new. It's modern. It's not like Sutherley, where quite clearly represented as a newer building. And the fact that Sir Thomas, it's said that he was his title was bestowed on him. It was not passed down. That is explicit in the text, that it was bestowed upon him. And he has to go and work and see to his business in Antigua. Modern retellings of this, like the movie with Johnny Lee Miller that came out in, I want to say, the 90s. I'll try to put the poster up here. Really, really drive home the abolitionist vibes that you get from the book. And you kind of have to read between the lines, because at the time it was illegal to pass slaves around, but slavery as itself was not illegal in the colony. And there's the whole concept in the book, there's the concept of English air. And at the time, one of the most disgustingly racist things that was going around was the concept that English air was too pure for those of African descent, that they would die because the air was too good for them. Which anyone with half a brain knows is bullshit. But this book talks about the quality of the air, and the Crawfords are from London, or spend a great deal of time in London, rather, and they talk about how good the air is, and that's thought to be a hint at the racist commentary of the day, that he has business in Antigua. He deals with slaves on the plantation. They talk about the quality of the air. All of these things, and the quality of the air is not something that Fanny Price talks about. It's something that the Crawfords, who are the villains of the piece, talk about. It's something that Sir Thomas talks about, and he is kind of a villain of the piece, too. That all of this, when you put all the clues together, it paints a very abolitionist picture. But that being said, we cannot consult the authoress herself, because she is no longer with us. That's just how linear time works. It's been hundreds of years since she passed. So she's not coming back. She doesn't have anything more to say unless we find a secret hidden journal, which we've never found any journals that she kept. We have her letters, and we can see in her letters that she was at the very least sympathetic to the abolitionist movement. And this book is kind of the nail in the coffin on the thesis that Jane Austen may have been an abolitionist, or at least been sympathetic to the abolitionist cause. And it's one of her more politically motivated books, and I don't mean politics like we're going to talk about the House of Lords in this chapter, and we're going to talk about the House of Commons, and it's political in a social politics lens. That it's a lot of social commentary in a very political manner, especially for the time period. And all of these things together, the wonderful heroine, the sweeping prose of Jane Austen, which I just love, the social commentary, the calling out evil and vile things that people have done to each other, just cements this as one of my favorite books of all time. Jane Austen is my favorite non-living author. Favorite living authors would probably be Gail Carriger and Stephen King, which I guess that runs the gamut of the human experience, Jane Austen to Gail Carriger to Stephen King. So, have you read Mansfield Park? Did you like it? Are you among the people who hated it? Why? I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Happy 250th birthday to Jane Austen, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.